we're talking about what I've learned in the last couple years about marriage. And my husband and I, as you now know, have been married for 26 years. We've been together for 28 years. We started seeing a marriage counselor, a therapist, whatever you call him. He's amazing. Dr. Cooper. I love this man. Thank you, Dr. Cooper, if you're listening. I want to share with you kind of 6 observations that I have from my personal experience about why it matters, why it's important to work on it, and what you need to do if you do want to repair a relationship that's broken or you want to improve and continue to grow together. So, the first thing is you have to be intentional and say to yourself, I am going to turn this around. I'm going to make it better. Because there's no half assing your marriage. You have to decide to make it better. Wishing it were better is what you're already doing. And it's very different than committing to make it better. Nothing in life is going to change until you make a decision to change it. And then you have to schedule in what you're doing with your partner to change it. And see, I look at marriage as this sort of like living thing. It's like a container in which you and your partner either grow or you wither and dry. I know that sounds like brutal and dramatic, but it's true. And if your marriage or your friendship matters to you, make it a fucking priority. It's really simple. If you want anything to grow, I mean, this is common sense. You got to care for it. You have to tend to it. You got to water it with kindness, with interest, with support. You have to tend to both your and your partner's ongoing growth. I mean, it's critical to your marriage. And I've said this a bazillion times, and I'm going to keep reminding you our marriage is not perfect. It's not the ideal. It is ideal for us. And I've already shared with you that there were years that are wonderful, where we were wonderful to each other, where we were together all the time and investing in each other's growth and growing together. And then there are those years that sucked. We caused each other a lot of pain. And I want you to view the painful stuff in a relationship like weeds in a garden. Over time, if you're not careful, those weeds, they fucking take over. So do not ignore the little shitty stuff because weeds, they start out as this tiny little thing. And then have you ever noticed you like go away from your garden for a couple days and it rains and then the sun comes out and these teeny little weeds are like 5 feet tall? That's the little shitty, irritating stuff. Talk about it. Ask for what you need. Clear the air. Do not harbor resentment. And I'm telling you, therapy, if you can afford it, get yourself to therapy. It is a gift. You know, Chris and I were already talking to an individual therapist, but that's not working on your marriage, by the way. That's working on yourself. And you should work on yourself. But it wasn't until we came together and made it a priority that things really started to shift. And one of the things that I love about talking to a therapist is that for me, I get more out of a 45-minute call with a therapist. We have never met our therapist in person. We do the entire thing virtually. But hitting the pause button every other week to truly unpack something that happened between the two of us, listen to one another. That's the hard part for me, I'm learning. To learn about one another. This is better than any damn date night could ever be because we're not just like going out and having time alone, we're actually investing in our growth. That's very different than having a steak and a bottle of wine. Like we're digging out the weeds in our relationships so that things can blossom and bloom so that when we do go out for that meal and you know that night out, it's actually more than just a dinner date. It's something that has real depth to it. So for you, you know, if you can't afford therapy, I totally get it, but I totally understand. I have been in that place in my life. There are free online courses you can take together. There are books that you could read together. In fact, the episode that we just released, Dr. Nicola Pera, her brand new workbook, How to Meet Yourself, is a guided journey through knowing yourself better. You could use that. $25. Use that to make your marriage better. So there are things that you can do if you get intentional. So, number two, this is also something that is critical. It seems like common sense, but you got to do it. You got to develop a genuine sense of interest again in the person. You were interested when you first met them. Remember that? But I bet along the way, you started to decide, oh, I know everything I know about this stupid person. Ugh, there they go again. Eye roll. Well, in therapy, I learned a lot about Chris that I didn't know. And I'm going to say it again. In therapy, I learned a lot about my husband that I didn't know. And I'm talking 24 years into marriage, things that I didn't know. I'm not talking about deep, dark secrets. I'm talking about the way that his thoughts and his feelings impact him. And like, for example, I had no idea how traumatized Chris was by his childhood because it wasn't like anything horrific happened to him. And his mom is one of my closest friends, but he was a latchkey kid. His parents were always working. His brothers were way older. Nobody was ever around. And so it was this sort of slow death march of isolation and feeling constantly alone. His experience was when I get home, nobody's there. When I play baseball, nobody shows up. That if I ask for something, I get teased. Nobody listens. So he stopped asking. In fact, he stopped asking to such a degree that he used to have a nickname in his family. When he was little, you know what they called my husband? The Monument. You want to know why? Because he didn't talk for 2 years. And everybody laughs about it. It was like some big joke. And the truth is, it's actually really sad. I mean, they laughed about it because nobody knew any better. And because he was just a little kid that felt like he was unseen and wasn't worthy of love, his needs didn't matter. He didn't know how to ask, or it just shut him down even more. And so I learned that part of the reason why he never asked for anything is because his experience growing up is that nobody gave a shit. And that helped me go from being annoyed at how quiet he is to really wanting to help support him. Because the fact is, he isn't the most effusive person. He's not the hardy har har guy. He's a deep thinker. And being interested, yes, it means be interested in somebody's hobbies, be interested in what happened to them, be interested in what they're saying. But it also means be interested in learning more about them as a human being. And we're all guilty of assuming we know someone just because we've known them for a long time. So, starting today, here's how you can apply this. Assume, starting today, that you don't know a lot about the person that you're with, that there's a whole part of them to discover. And I'm not talking about some deep, dark secret. I'm just talking about how they feel, how their childhood impacted them. Just think about yourself for a minute. When I think about how much I've changed, my God, in the last 4 years, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, I've lived that in my own mind and body. Unless you talk about it and listen to each other, you're not going to know that. I can give you another example of how little we know about each other. So, when I was hosting this daytime talk show, we did an episode where Chris was on, and there was this like marriage expert relationship person. And Chris revealed on national television that when it comes to being intimate, he prefers to have sex in the morning. I had been married to the guy for 22 years. I had no idea that's what he preferred. So you're not going to really get connected to someone unless you're interested in learning more about them. So ask more questions, be more curious. And that interest also means be loud and celebratory. I've been working on this. I mean, Chris, as he's leading his men's retreat called Soul Degree, I'm cheering for him. As he is pursuing a master's in spiritual psychology, I am rooting for him. As he is studying and getting a certificate to be a death doula, I am like clearing the schedule, making sure he's got time to do that. As he is pursuing a certification to do integration therapy for the new psychedelic modalities, I'm like all in. Him feeling supported and celebrated, that makes him know that I'm not only interested, but that I love him enough to be supportive in the things that he wants to do. And of course, he is cheering loud for me. And this isn't just obvious, this is also researched. Celebrating and sharing wins is critical. It's probably one of the reasons why you're roommates. You need to start pointing out what's going right instead of griping about the shit that's going wrong. Researchers from UCLA discovered that the single most crucial factor in tightening or destroying a bond that you have with your partner is how you react to good news in one another's lives. How you react to good news based on research, way more important than how you react to any bad news. And here's why. You see, researchers found that celebrating your partner gives your partner an emotional lift, whereas playing down big news, like, oh, that's okay, it leaves a lasting chill. And so you can start implementing that practice immediately. The next time your partner has something good happen, big or small, celebrate that shit. Show them how proud you are. Give them a high five, hug them. And if they don't have something amazing going on, freaking call it out. Thank you for taking the dog out. Thank you for doing this. The small things really matter because when they're ignored, those small things become weeds and resentment that grow and that separate the two of you. Now, the third thing, we did an entire episode on this. I call it Get on the Fun Bus. I'm serious. In therapy, one thing that I said over and over to Chris is this: our life is too serious, man. I am so sick and tired of talking about all this serious shit. I am tired of the problems. I am tired of just feeling like life is a grind. We need to have more fucking fun. And the thing about fun, and we talked about this on the episode about having fun with your family around the holidays, is you're not having fun unless you plan to have fun. I think we all make the mistake of thinking that, oh, fun has to be spontaneous. No, when you were little, your parents planned all the fun shit you did, and so you got to get serious about inserting fun again. In fact, I want to share a story with you. This is how important this is and how this simple concept infuses a dead relationship with new energy. It infuses that roommate syndrome that you may be feeling with this new rhythm and fun that can happen. Instead of that slow quitting, you can pick up the fun again and start to reinvest in each other. And I'm telling you right now, the more that you can bring fun back into your relationship, just like you did when you were dating in the beginning, remember those days? There's a reason why dating is fun because you're planning fun things to do. Just this past weekend, we had flown from Southern Vermont to Northern California to go to a business meeting. And we had 90 minutes before we had to get to the start of this business meeting. And as we're driving from the San Francisco airport, I'm like, oh my God, have you ever seen the Redwood Forest? I think Muir Woods is right here. Neither one of us had never been there. So we pull off the highway. It is 4:15 at night. The Muir Woods National Forest is closing in 45 minutes. There is a dark, looming cloud coming, and it looks like it's about to rain horizontally. We drive straight to Muir Woods with 30 minutes to spare. We were the only ones there. It was so fun. And there were this dark, cloudy sky, so it felt like we were in a Hobbit movie. We hadn't planned it. It was so fun. And it reminded me we need to do more of that. So, the fastest way to create more energy, go see a great movie. Go exercise or hike together. Take dancing lessons. Cook something new. Check out a concert. Head to a theme park. Ride a roller coaster. Go skinny dipping. It doesn't matter what you do. Do something that you used to do when you were dating. Just make it fun. And what if your partner doesn't want to do any of these fun things? Total bump on the log. All right. Well, when we come back, I have somebody who's struggling with that, and we're going to hear her question next. All right, welcome back. I'm Mel Robbins, and we're talking about the things that I have learned after being married for 26 years and being in and working with a marriage therapist with my husband for the past 2 years. And so we've covered a couple of them, and now I want to address a question that I am getting a lot. And this one comes from a listener named Jen.
Hey Mel, it's Jen. How do we continue to move forward through the change process with a partner who's not willing to move forward too, or at least encourage you? There's a huge gap coming, and it's really scary. Thanks so much, Mel. We appreciate everything that you do.
I can kind of hear the fear in your voice, Jen. It is scary when you get to a point where you realize that you've grown apart from somebody that you used to know. But first, remember, if underneath all that you still truly love this person and you're willing to work on it, you can absolutely make it better. And it's worth doing the work on. But your question is something that I get a lot. Your partner's not encouraging you, and your partner sounds like doesn't want to do the work. So I'm going to address this, and I want to just make sure that there are two aspects to this question of your partner not wanting to move forward, not wanting to join you, not encouraging you. So there is two situations where that's true, and one of them is not that big of a deal, and one of them is a really big deal. So if you're with somebody that doesn't wanna do the things that you wanna do. They're not interested in having fun. For example, like, let's say my husband really wanted to go to a dude ranch. I personally have 0 interest in doing that. I do not wanna move forward with that idea. I once went to a dude ranch to celebrate my dad's, 70th birthday, and I got bucked off a horse and broke my leg and my tailbone. Not interested in that. However, it is important if you wanna go the distance. I believe this so much that you are able to do things on your own and you are supported in that. So, it's very different to say that your partner doesn't wanna be the plus one in your professional dancing career, or they don't wanna be the plus one in your desire to scale Mount Kilimanjaro. That's cool. You should pursue things separately from one another. You should have friends that you go off and do things with. You should have goals and hobbies that are yours alone. But I don't think that's what you're asking. I think what you're asking is, what do I do if I want to work on this, but my husband will not go to therapy? My husband will not address the problems. My partner or wife will not do the work. If you're in that situation where you're willing and you love this person and they refuse to go to therapy, it's not going to work. You can go to therapy alone, but you will not be working on your marriage. You'll be working on yourself. And yes, therapy will change you for the better. And it might just change some of your habits and your mindset. So that changes the dynamic in your marriage. But to me, that's really a marriage of enduring. It's a marriage that you're surviving because you're with somebody that's not willing to meet you halfway. And when you're in a relationship and the other person won't work on it, what's going to happen is, and I've seen this happen over and over and over again, is the one person who's willing to go to therapy, who's willing to look in the mirror, who's willing to work on themselves, you know what they tend to do? They work themselves to a new level and right on out of that marriage. That's what happens. Because if you don't continue to grow with somebody, you're going to grow to resent them. And that is a scary place. But my only kind of recommendation is, you got to keep asking, you got to work on yourself. And at some point, there will become a time where you're going to say, it's not negotiable. In order for me to stay in this relationship, you have to be able to do XYZ. And if you can't do those things, then I can't stay in this because you're not willing to work on it. And I hope it doesn't come to that. Now, another thing that has made a big difference in our relationship in the last couple years, bringing us much closer together, is reversing roles. So, this is not some sort of like thing you're going to do in the bedroom, although you can. This is not the thing that I'm referring to, although maybe Chris and I should try that. But what I'm talking about is sort of the default roles that you both play in your relationship. So I used to be the person, and this is probably due to my anxiety, where I was the one that was always planning everything. I would pick the restaurants, I'd set the agenda, I would bulldoze the path forward. Um, and here's what I learned in therapy: that in me moving so fast all the time and always taking control, it created two major problems. Problem number one: Chris had zero room to step in and take the lead and take care of me. And the more I just did it, I just took care of it, I just picked the restaurant, da, 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 the more I made Chris feel really concerned that if he tried to do those things, I wouldn't like what he did. And so my busyness, my proactiveness, my anxiety about it, my just get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done, it literally made his silence and his thinking worse because there was no room for him to do anything. And second, and here's where the real kicker came, I started to feel like everything was always up to me, and that if I didn't do it, nobody would do it. And It's funny because this dynamic that I created because of my sort of anxious and go-getter nature literally was the reason why this happened. I would do everything and then be like, "Why the hell are you doing something? Why is it always me doing something?" And then Chris would go like, "Well, because you're always doing something and I never have time to do something and I would like to do something, but you've already done that thing." And so we were just locked in this. We were physically together, but having a massive disconnection in our emotional experience of being together. And that theme showed up over and over and over again in therapy. In fact, when Dr. Cooper said to us, "You guys are great at transaction, you're sequestered emotionally." That's exactly what he meant. That you're great at doing all this shit, Mel. And you're great at doing all your shit, Chris, but you're in your own corners emotionally and you're not aware of how one another is feeling. So, how are we changing that? Well, there's a lot of slowing down I'm learning when you are changing a relationship for the better. Because what you're really changing in your relationship when you change it for the better is you are breaking apart the old patterns and you are replacing them with new ways of showing up. And so, again, it's like habits that you need to break and replace and a muscle that you need to rep. And so, me personally, I'm working on stepping back instead of just racing ahead full throttle. And I am giving Chris the lead on planning and organizing. I mean, the man does design and lead men's retreats for crying out loud. So, for example, when our anniversary came up, normally I would pick what we're going to do. I would do all this kind of stuff. And, I also noticed that I have this propensity to be like, "Oh, no, that's okay. You don't have to get anything. Oh, no, 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 I don't need anything. Let's not do presents this year." And then I'd be pissed off that there were no presents. So the poor guy couldn't win. I told you I was the asshole in this relationship. So I said to Chris, "Why don't you just take the reins? Don't even tell me what we're doing." And it was incredible. He surprised me and booked this place that was literally less than an hour away from us in southern Vermont. We took a few days off to just unplug and eat phenomenal food and sleep without the dog waking us up at 5:30 in the morning. And Chris surprised me. It was on our 26th wedding anniversary. On that first night with this stunning ring and vows that he had written out. And, I the ring was really insane because Chris had not given me a piece of jewelry that he had picked out and bought for me since our engagement ring. I'm going to say that again. In 26 years, Chris had not picked out and given me a piece of jewelry since our engagement ring. I had always pointed things out and told him what to get and again managed that. And what had happened is a year ago, we were deep in therapy and I was out in Vegas to give a speech and Chris had come with me. And as a lark, one night before we were about to pull into the elevators at the hotel, we walked into this jewelry store and I tried on this crazy ring. And little did I know, Chris had called the store after we left Vegas, got the details, and had a jeweler back home make it. And he had been holding on to it for months, waiting for the right time to give it to me. Now, I, of course, had nothing to give to him. Um, but it was incredible. And, after that experience, I nicknamed him the trip leader because I realized that the moments in life that I feel the safest and the most in love with him are not when he's giving me jewelry, it's when he's the leader. He's blazing the trail when we're hiking, he's setting up camp when we're camping. He is really doing what he does best, which ironically is planning. In fact, he's so good at it, I might never, ever plan a thing again. And one other thing I want to say about that when our 25th wedding anniversary hit, things were so bad between us, we didn't do anything. I mean, imagine making it to 25 years and being in a state in your marriage where you're like, I don't even feel like celebrating. We have so much work to do to find our way back to one another. after all the shit that we have been through these past couple years and how far apart we feel from one another and how much resentment has built up. And for him, how much shame and regret. And for me, shame and regret too. That on our 25th wedding anniversary, we didn't do anything. We didn't celebrate. We didn't post about it. We didn't toast. We just let the day come and we let the day go. And so for us to get to a point a year later where he and I have been working hard to truly address the things that went sideways and to hear one another and to be interested in one another's experience and feelings and be interested in showing up and changing. That's what we were actually celebrating. That's why there were new vows. And that's what's possible when both of you are willing to do the work. And so the fifth thing is you got to ask for what you need. It's taken me 20 some years to just ask for what I need. This is a novel idea, but instead of being pissed off at your partner, why not just ask for what you need? It's a lot easier than being angry and annoyed all the time. And I think a lot of us get into trouble. This is that sort of slow, quiet quitting that I was talking about because we show up in a relationship and we expect our partner to behave the same way we wish they would. And we don't ever fully communicate what we actually need. And they don't ever fully communicate what they need. I gave you the example of us being married for 20 years and me not even knowing that Chris prefers to be intimate in the morning. Never talked about it. Like that's dumb. Why not just talk about it? It just is so obvious. I'll give you another example. I love flowers. I mean, I love, love, love flowers. I have parents that turned a wooded plot of land in suburban West Michigan into this gorgeous, gorgeous perennial garden. And I just love flowers. It reminds me of my childhood. I love taking care of them. I love growing them. And I love buying myself flowers. Nothing makes me happier than going to the grocery store. And if I see a little bouquet of tulips or daffodils, I mean, I'm talking $3, $4. You don't have to like buy the roses. I just love having fresh flowers in my house. And when Chris goes to the grocery store and he buys a bundle of tulips for me, it's like, oh my God, you were thinking about me and you know this about me. It took me a long time to tell Chris that. Do you know what was happening instead? For years, when I would travel, I would take off on a Monday to go give a bunch of speeches. I'd return home on a Friday, like a lot of you do that travel for work, that are road warriors out there. And I would come home, and you know what would be on the kitchen counter when I got home? A vase full of the dead flowers that I had bought for myself that nobody in the family had bothered to pull out of the vase while I was gone. And when I would walk in and see those dead flowers, that was a sign to me that nobody even thought about me while I was gone. Nobody was expecting me to come home tonight. Nobody was excited for me to come home. And so one day I said to Chris, you know, it would mean a lot to me if when I come home from a business trip, or hell, whenever you go to the grocery store, if you just picked up flowers. Because when I see, I'm talking grocery store flowers, people. I'm not talking go to the florist. I'm saying the bare minimum. When there's a little bundle of tulips sitting in a plastic vase on the counter or a mason jar, it makes me know that you're thinking of me. And I'll tell you, that's all it took. Every time the man goes to the grocery store, he returns with flowers, and it puts the biggest freaking smile on my face. So ask. Instead of punishing somebody, instead of quietly quitting, get loud about what you want. And in return, ask your partner to get loud about what they need from you. Don't assume that you know your partner's love language or what they wish that you were doing. Just ask them and start doing it. And finally, this is a big one. Assume good intent. One of the things that I've learned about my husband, Chris, it's been a reminder really, and this is one of those things that happens when you really slow down and you get present with the person whether it's your spouse or your partner or a friend, is that my husband's just like, he's just like a really nice guy. There's not a mean bone in Christopher Robin's body. And I get so worked up in my own shit that I forget that. I just forget that he's not out to be an asshole. He's not trying to screw me over. He's not some dickhead that's doing the. He's just a nice guy who's doing his best. And see, I think we forget that. If you deep down still love the person that you're with, but there's all this crap that's built up, find your way to anchor there. Assume good intent. Assume that they didn't mean to use that tone of voice, that they didn't mean to frustrate you, that they didn't mean to fail at whatever they failed at, that they didn't mean. Assume good intent. Remember the person that you fell in love with, because I believe that person is still deep down in there. But any relationship, whether it's a friendship or a family relationship or a love relationship that goes the distance, there's shit that builds up. But the person who they are at their core, that doesn't change. That doesn't change. And so if your response to me saying, assume good intent is, oh, Christ, Mel. I mean, you should like, and you're starting to make a case about the person you're with, there's your answer. Get out. If you can't even admit that at their core, this is a good person, this is a nice person, then get out because you're with somebody that's not a nice person. You're more committed to making your case and being right about this than you are about seeing something deeper that's worth working for. And to me, that's the bottom line because that's what I've learned through these past challenging years and at times very painful changes in years that we've been through. That if you're both willing to look a little deeper and remind yourself of why you loved him in the first place, if you're both willing to look in the mirror and work on yourselves and your relationship, you can work through anything. You really can. You can get through some horrific things. You can get through things that seem insurmountable, whether it is addiction or the death of a loved one or cheating or bankruptcy. You can get through all kinds of things if you're both willing to work on yourselves and your relationship. If you're willing to remember that deep down, you're with somebody that is a good person at heart that maybe lost their way, that your relationship is a living, breathing, organic thing, a place where you're either going to grow or you're going to wither and die. You got to care for it. You got to tend to it. You got to shower it with kindness and genuine interest and support. And please, dear God, can we start having some fucking fun? I mean, let's just stop waiting for another couple to invite you over and start throwing some dinner parties and some dance parties and some playlists and have some fun. Like maybe it's that we've all gotten a little too serious. Save the serious talk for your therapy sessions and bring the fun to the rest of your life. Bring your inner life to the surface. And I'm telling you, your connection will not only grow, but it will also grow strong. And in case no one else tells you today, I hope that your partner or your friend tells you this, but in case they don't, I'm going to tell you I love you and I believe in you. And I believe in your ability to create a better life and better relationships. And how about you start putting what I just shared with you to work right now? Let's talk about the transition that my daughter's going through. How can I help her cope with this massive life transition?
So I think there's two things that you can do, Mel. The first one is I think we need to help you cope with the transition because it's, I'm sorry to say, but it's a transition for you too, right? It's a big transition for you, right? It's ending time she's coming home. And I heard you say things like, what's next for her, right? We all have expectations of other people in transition too. So I think first thing is just you pausing and asking yourself about your expectations of her transition.
You are so good. Wow. Here's how I feel about it. I am very triggered by her anxiety. And so knowing that one of my kids is really uncomfortable makes me want to run and save her from it.
What about her anxiety makes you feel uncomfortable? What are you saying to yourself that her anxiety makes you feel anxious?
That somebody that I love is in pain, and I want to make it go away.
But why?
I don't know. Because it hurts my heart to see her crying and sad, and
Because you love her.
yeah, and also there'll probably be a level of moping and annoying behavior that gets aimed at my husband and I when she's home and she's not able to tolerate like the feelings and the fact that it's over and that college went like that and her fear about what comes next. And so knowing that there will be a level of discomfort makes me uncomfortable.
Well, for you now, what I hear is this. You love your daughter.
Yes.
And her being uncomfortable, it's being translated in your brain as something is bad.
True.
And let's be clear, there's no transition without discomfort for anybody. She's going to have some level of discomfort that she has to tolerate and you have to tolerate. If she didn't, Mel, something would be wrong.
It's true.
Right? So the first thing is her being uncomfortable and her anxiety don't necessarily mean something bad. Now, it can lead to something bad. But at first, I want us to really think about this as an opportunity for a new beginning. Right? She's closing an end, and there's a natural grief that happens for everybody, or letting go of the old.
Yeah.
And so she's going to come home with some level of discomfort. A lot of the kids coming home from college are going to have some level of discomfort. And I think the first thing the parents can do is allow discomfort to exist a little bit. Maybe not going into fix right away, right? And if it gets thrown at you like the way you're talking about, just pausing and calling it out, saying, hey, listen, it looks like you're upset and you're throwing it at me, and this is not my transition.
Yeah.
Right? Holding space from discomfort is the first thing a parent can do.
Well, I think this is even bigger because if you think about it, like if you have a spouse or a partner that gets fired from a job, you're going to have somebody that you love go through discomfort. If you have a friend I have a friend who just lost their dad. And of course, they're going through a period of discomfort.
Yep.
And or at least I just want to run towards it and try to fix it and make it go away. And I think you're right. It's that I, in my brain, associate these transitions in life and these moments of emotional processing and upheaval as bad.
Yeah. And so you are trying to fix it. You know, I had a friend of mine just got fired from a job after 10 years, financial industry. She just woke up one day and got fired. So she texted me. I canceled everything, said, let's go for lunch. We're sitting at lunch. And the first thing she said to me is like, you know, Luana, a week ago I was walking into work and I just wanted my ID to not go through. I wanted them to have fired me already. I was so miserable. But I just didn't want to quit. It pays the bills. And I looked at her and I said, we're best friends. And you never told me that level of discomfort. People are so ashamed of how they interpret discomfort. They don't even share. And then I looked at her and I said, how are you feeling? She's like, no, I'm okay. And I paused and I looked at her. Let me call her Mary. And I said, Mary, it's okay not to be okay. And for a week, Mel, when I called her, she's like, it's okay. I said, it is not okay. You just got fired and you were the one that pays most of the bills in your house. If you're not feeling uncomfortable right now, something is wrong. And I want you to know it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to have discomfort right now. And if you run from it, you're just going to avoid the rest of your life. So the first step here in transition is to feel our feelings, right?
I don't want to feel my feelings.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
know.
thing. Like I wanted to not feel that way.
Yeah, but see, that's the only way to feel more uncomfortable is not feeling our feelings. So feelings are normal, biologically wired, and we have them. Our brain tells us when we're feeling uncomfortable. And then what we do, we run, we avoid, and then we feel more uncomfortable. And the only way of actually getting through your emotions is by feeling feelings. We've seen this on kids. Look at a 5-year-old in a temper tantrum.
Yep.
Right? If you tell them, stop feeling this way, they escalate. They get so loud and obnoxious.
It's true.
If you sit next to a 5-year-old and say, okay, so you're feeling frustrated. What else are you feeling? And my son will be like, I don't want to tell my emotions right now. I said, okay, so you're feeling like you don't want to feel. And I just sit there and I wait. And guess what? His emotional brain cools off. His thinking brain comes back online. And it lasts 3 minutes instead of 20 minutes of a fight.
So what do I do?
Mm.
When she gets
Well,
home?
Yeah, so I think two things we're gonna
Oh,
do.
that's right. We were talking about me, not her. See
Yeah.
how I wanted to shift this?
Do you know why?
I'm avoiding
Yes,
you
you are.
making me talk about something that makes me uncomfortable.
You are absolutely. You just wanted to run away from your emotions right now.
Yes.
Do you see how fast it happens, Mel?
Yes.
So, and we do this. That's one of the tactics of avoidance. We just shift the conversation. It's much safer in your podcast to talk about your daughter and her transition, her anxiety, than just sit here with, I'm having trouble feeling my feelings right now.
Yeah. I'm absorbing her transition as my own.
Yeah.
Wow. So I just need to feel my feelings.
Yeah.
And I need to avoid the urge to rush in and fix it. And I need to just hold space
Yeah.
and let her and myself feel whatever we're going to feel.
And what do you feel right now? Can we just stay with that? What does it feel like right now?
I feel really sad for her.
Yeah. Tell me more.
Oh my God. Really? Okay.
Yes.
I feel like the tractor beam lock on. I feel really sad for her. I had a really crappy end to my college experience where I got extremely sick and they thought I had meningitis. And I experienced graduation by laying underneath a tree on the side. And I don't even remember walking across that stage. I'm not sure I was well enough.
Wow. So you're really sad about yourself, Mel. That's what you're really sad about. You didn't have a graduation. What makes us say that your daughter's graduation is going to be under a tree?
Oh, it's not. She's singing the national anthem
Woo!
in front of 18,000 people.
Wait.
That bitch is going to be on stage. She's not going to be under some tree.
She's going to be on stage.
Yeah.
But see, your brain is back at your graduation. That's why you feel sad.
Oh, wow.
She's going to be on stage, Mel, singing. She's not under a tree. You're not feeling sad for your daughter. You're feeling sad that you got robbed your own graduation. That would make me sad too. I mean, seeing you under that tree right now just made my heart crunch. Like I had a little heart moments that.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And, I think I'm also just, so much of your work also focuses on avoidance. And I'm very present to the fear that she feels now that school's over and it's time to do the work. You want to be a singer-songwriter? Prove it. And I just feel worried for her.
Of course you do. You're her mother. You love her. We established that love matters. So worried for her makes a lot of sense. Concerned that this transition is going to be hard for a lot of kids. It's the first time they have to really prove themselves. The first time that they have to really show up. Because see, college has a map. You do this and you do this and you do this. The real life transitions don't have a map. They come with uncertainty. Uncertainty activates our brain and makes us go on fight, flight, or freeze. And that's why we want to avoid in transitions because that fear is overriding it, right? But you have the techniques to help her. It's going to be her choosing to approach every day. And it sounds like she has a clear value. She cares, and I'm going to put the words in her mouth, but she cares about creativity. She cares, right? And so now she needs to create clear goals. And, we're here in the studio. You have amazing systems already that you develop for yourself. You help her develop her own systems around what are the actions she's going to take every day towards that value. And life happens one little day at a time. You don't become on stage and become the best singer overnight, right? So she's going to have to lean towards that value every day. And what I'd say to her is this: every week on Sunday, look at your calendar for the next week.
Yep.
Make sure that your actions are aligned with your values. Every day, I do this every Sunday. I look, and if a day I'm not acting towards impact or family or health, which is another one for me, I'm not putting 40 pounds back on, so I need to get to the gym. And if it's not there, I rearrange my day. Because what science teaches us is that a value-driven life decreases stress, decrease depression, decrease anxiety, increases well-being. And so I bet your daughter, who is now singing the national anthem, kicking ass, can create this beautiful life one little action at a time.
Well, here's the irony. The lack of structure is probably exactly what she needs. There's
Correct.
probably a kind of the container has been amazing for the stage that she's in. And now it's time for her to go and create what she needs to create.
That's it. That's
Wow,
it.
I just got so much out of that conversation. And I love the values as a way to anchor yourself through a transition.
That's it.
Wow.
Because see, if you go through transitions and you don't have an anchor, right? I
Yep.
love the word you use. That is a word I think about. It's like the visual I share with patients is you're in a boat. It's choppy waters, okay? And you're just going whatever the wind is blowing. In choppy waters, you got to drop an anchor. And that anchor is your values. And now you decide, okay, now that I'm anchored, I know the values, then you decide which way you're going to sail in your life. But you have to have an anchor first so that you're not just blown everywhere. And your daughter is in an awesome position because it's clear to me she has the anchor. Now it's a matter of action. But values are the real anchors in life.
You've got to hold space for the fact that you've just swung in the direction of a healthy feeling, and eventually it's going to swing back. And what I like about what you're teaching us, Sean, is that through these habits, and you said a gratitude practice, a journaling practice, exercising every day, taking 2 minutes to write a note to somebody. These are simple things that leverage all this research. This is the neck down approach as far as I'm concerned. Something that has nothing to do with how you feel, but impacts how you feel. That these are things that anybody can do. But what do you do? Because I can sit here and like mouth off on the mic and say that, I can hold space and all this shit. But the truth is, like, I get very triggered when somebody that I love is sad. And I want to fix it, Sean. But how do you hold space? How do you like kind of operate, whether it's you personally, Sean, or what do you recommend? Because you do so much corporate strategy work and teaching. What do you do like for leaders when there's somebody on their team that's really struggling? Like, how do you show up as a space and commitment for happiness for others when they don't feel like it?
It's such an interesting question because, when we speak to groups of people, you get 300 people in a room, plus, someone in there is going through grief. It's just statistically, someone's going through grief. Maybe 20% are on an antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication. That they're, the 10% or more have been abused, right? And to go into the more I think about it, the more I become paralyzed as a speaker. Like if I thought about that, because I know that I would not, say some of the things that I would be saying, even in this conversation, maybe not, but I definitely would soft pedal some of the things in the happiness advantage if one of my friends had just lost their son. I would not go immediately to this because I think that there's a moment that, and a long moment for grief that we need to allow, and a recognition that that's part of love and that's part of being human. At the same time, what's helped me hold that space that you're describing is that I'll find out after a talk that someone will come up to me and be like, this traumatic event just happened to our kid. And I immediately think in my head, why did I say some of these things, right? And they were like, you have no idea how much I need to hear this today. So my beliefs and assumptions about what that person needed to hear were completely wrong. And I give myself space to realize in those moments that I don't have everything figured out, which is actually really helpful in a way that I think links back to what you were describing. That I think that that what the last person described was exactly what my parents felt about me when I was depressed, right? My parents have said it to me. They were like, we felt helpless. We watched you go through depression. We saw you were depressed. And we couldn't do anything. And you were in Boston, far away from us. So I could hear them feeling the same thing that parent felt as well. And that's why I'm a happiness researcher now, because I went through that depression, right? And because they were there for me in the midst of it, and my friends were, and because I took these steps, all of that made me feel like depression wasn't in the story and made me want to talk to other people about it. So that moment of suffering that you're describing, what I keep telling parents that, will say my kid is depressed, I say, I was too. And that's not the end of the story. And that's very typical, right? Like that is very normal. I think we panic when we don't feel the happiness we're told we're supposed to feel all the time. Um, what I wish that it could be a constant corollary to my work is to let people know that you should not feel happy all the time. If you do, that's a disorder, right? You're divorced from reality. What we want you to do is that when you feel swung towards the negative side and you're doing deficit thinking, like the first person,
Yep.
uh, that we need to spend some of those precious finite resources to scanning for the positive parts of the story that are equally true, or to talk about our story instead of just our son's story.
I think that the numbers that you said about an audience are way higher. And I would push back on you and say that the research and the recommendations that you're making work and that everybody needs to hear them. And if you're in a state of acute grief, then you're not going to be capable of doing it. But the second that you're grabbing for a lifeline, these simple habits that you're talking about of simply getting out of bed, exercising, journaling, practicing gratitude, and then sending a note of kindness. And it might just be to people that helped you during the funeral, that gives you a lifeline, that gives you access to the power within you, that helps you come back to yourself. And so I think we make the mistake of tiptoeing around people's depression and people's sadness, and we treat them with kid gloves when actually what they need is not only the empathy and the support and the check-in, but these mile markers and guideposts that help you swing back in the direction of feeling happier again. And, I do love that you keep coming back and back and back to this idea that this is something you practice. I have never heard anybody say that happiness is a team sport. I have always thought about it as happiness, like having good social connections results in happiness. But you're saying almost the inverse, which is that when you prioritize connecting with people in a more meaningful way, or even simply to seek some support and help, the result that you feel is more joy and happiness, even as you're going through these very difficult times. It's almost like happiness and joy can become a life vest that keeps you afloat. It's not like it's exhilarating. And I'm starting to really get at a much deeper cellular level what you're saying, when it's like we need a different definition for this. It's not pleasure. It's something else that's way more important. So many people remarked about the openness that you guys have all displayed on various episodes of this podcast. And do you personally think that you have a very open relationship with me and Dad? Or how would you describe the type of relationship that you have with Dad and I? So why don't you go first?
To answer the question point blank, yes, definitely very open. I tell them almost everything. And that being said, I consider myself extremely open. I tell them anything from work to friend problems to boyfriend issues, etc. But I think that I am actually the least open when now looking to my two right, my siblings, simply because I think I choose what I share with them, and that is a lot, but not every single detail, which others can speak to.
Guilty.
Okay, now you're up.
Why do you share stuff with us?
I think that growing up, we always had a very open relationship, and I think one of the core things that you both instilled in all of us is you will never ever get in trouble for telling the truth. If we were telling you completely upfront and honestly what we were doing, where we were going, who we were going with, or in general, like what is going on in our lives, then regardless of what it was, we would never be punished for that. And I will always remember I had an incident with my first time drinking. I drank a whole handle of vodka, and I'm the oldest, so that was my first rodeo. And I woke up in the morning and I was petrified, puke all over myself, sleeping on the window bench. I thought I was just toast. Like, I thought I was dead meat. I was so scared. And then we all sat down in the screened-in porch, and they both said to me, "We will never punish you for something that we also did as kids. And as long as you are open and honest about..."
That pretty much opens the door wide
Oh,
open.
yeah, baby. I was running with gas after that. But after you guys said that, I just felt so much more at ease. And my punishment that day was actually going to a lacrosse tryout, which I yacked at several times. But then I looked at my other friends who would get in trouble and for drinking or for doing things we weren't allowed to, and they would immediately be grounded. They'd immediately have to stay home. They were restricted from alcohol. They were whatever. And that just kind of put a huge barrier between, I think, them and their parents, which was just, let's be sneaky, let's steal, let's sneak out, let's go to parties and lie about where we are. When I think from very early on, you both were very vocal about, as long as you are honest, you will not get in trouble. And I think that just eliminated the barrier between us completely.
I think a lot of parents say that. I think that is every parent's throwaway line. Hey, as long as you tell me the truth, you're not going to get in trouble. As long as you call me, you're not getting in trouble. And then in the tsunami of emotions, when you get the call that your kid is blacked out, or there's been a huge party, or the police showed up, or whatever else, most parents freak out and then ground or punish.
Mm-hmm.
No, I disagree. I disagree. For you to say that every parent out there just makes a blanket statement that says, just tell us the truth and you'll be fine. Like, no way. That therein lies, I think, one of the secrets, the keys to the kingdom, is inviting that truth telling, because most people don't.
Okay,
Right.
well,
I
that,
agree. I agree.
I actually don't think that any of my friends, I mean, I think that, like, it was unspoken in a lot of my friends' households growing up that, like, if you tell us the truth, you won't get in trouble. But, like, it wasn't actually, like, there was a difference between what they were saying and what they were doing in terms of the parents. Like, the parents want you to tell the truth, but they're still going to punish you. You guys want us to tell the truth, but you're not going to punish us. Like, you actually do what you say you're going to do as parents.
But did you, Mel? Is that what your parents told you? Because I didn't.
yeah.
See, I didn't get that from my parents. I just got the idea that the message to me was, it takes a long time to build trust, and it takes 2 seconds to shatter the trust, which is sort of infers that tell the truth and you're not going to blow up relationships or leave people feeling, sort of lost inside of the dynamic between the two of you.
Like, my number one goal as your parent in our relationship building was to get you to want to come and talk to me and Dad about important topics instead of going to your dipshit friends. And, I always thought, if you're 13, 14, 15, or 16, way better to talk through something you're thinking about or worried about or, wanting to try and all that stuff with adults who will listen to you than going to other 14, 15, or 16-year-olds that don't know what the hell they're doing.
I agree with that. And this was, like, sort of going to be my whole point about, like, why I also have such an open relationship with my parents, arguably too open. But
Definitely too open.
yeah, don't take notes from me. I turned out fine, sort of. But
TBD.
what I was going to say is, you were just saying, like, it's so much better for kids at that age to, like, go to their parents who will listen to them rather than their dipshit friends. But, like, that's the issue, is that parents don't listen. And what I was going to say, my whole point is that there's a difference between, like, I think that, like, my definition of listen, as, like, you guys have defined what listen means to me, and it's, like, internalizing what we're saying. Like, parents all around the world can just listen to their kid be like, I really want to go to this party tonight, like blah, 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 blah. Or like, can I please, like whatever it may be. Oh, I got too drunk at this party, or oh, I slept with someone before I was ready. Like there's a difference between hearing what they're saying and actually listening and internalizing how it's making them feel. Like I feel like every time we told you guys something as kids, you would actually like empathize with us and hear us and internalize it. And in doing that, you were able to like loosen the reins a little bit and let us fuck up and let us fail and let us, and instead of being like, you're stupid, like you're being punished, that was dumb, you were like, let's talk about it. How is it making you feel?
So
Blah,
you're
blah, blah.
saying in these conversations that we were having as you were growing up, you had that sense of feeling heard
Yes.
inside
Yes.
of.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh.
My dad is bawling.
That's cool.
Oh, Dad. I hate when you cry. I really wasn't planning on this.
But no, totally.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like most kids don't talk to their parents because their parents don't hear them and don't listen to them. So why would they?
I think a lot of my friends, for example, whenever they would want to go on a trip or go to a party or do anything they want to do, and they already knew in the back of their head that their parents didn't want them to or were going to say no, they go into the conversation to talk about that and express how they're feeling. And as a kid, I think we all come from the exact same scenario where we want to explain why we want to go to this thing or go to this trip or why we should be able to do this, etc. But on the other end, the parents, like Kendall said, may be listening, but they already have an answer in the back of their head. Their mind is made up. There's no room for conversation or changing. I think that when kids go into conversations with parents who immediately make up their mind, do not allow for any sort of alterations or changes to the plan, then you're just set up for failure, because then it just turns into sneakiness and hatred and all that stuff. Yeah, resentment. And so I don't know. I think that I'm looking for a word, but I think this is also a little bit of, I think parents and children should not obviously be equal. Like parents need to have a little bit of authority over children, but I think what I really appreciated most, and a lot, yeah, for sure. Yeah, okay. And but I think that like at the end of the day, like I always felt as a child like you're equal. And I always felt like you guys.
What does that mean? Because I don't think Dad and I ever bought into the parenting philosophy of being your friends. What Dad and I, at least if I had to summarize the way that we think about parenting, is I think about parenting as though our job is to help you figure out who you are. Mm-hmm. And that means learning how to think through decisions, learning how to come to terms with your own values, learning the weight of the consequences of decisions, and that the whole point of parenting is for you to grow up and leave and go find somebody that you love as much as Dad and I love one another, and go build a family, and to become more of who you are. And so we were always focused on connection first, correction dead last.
I feel like I'm so open because you guys were so open with me. Like, I feel like I could go to you guys, I could ask you guys something about your life, and you'd tell me. There was nothing that you really hid from me. Maybe there was, or maybe I was just so young that I didn't really ask, but you were very open, which was super nice. And I also felt like you guys had my back, like 100% of the time, no matter what. For example, I went to camp for a month and I got bullied. And so my mom found out about it and she like refused to let me stay there. So she took me out a week early, which felt really nice because it showed that she cared about how I was feeling and she understood that and she acted upon it, which was really helpful for me. And it showed that she has my back. And she continued to show me that throughout the rest of my life.
Seeking connection with you guys required us to learn how to listen. It required us to learn how to hear your points of view, even though they were often stupid or immature or dangerous or irrational or emotional or irritating. but still to respect you enough to listen. And no, and oftentimes your ideas were great and we would listen and acquiesce. But I think you also had a sense of safety because we always had guardrails. There's nothing you're going to do that's dangerous. There's nothing we're going to allow you to do that is self-destructive or destructive to other people. There is nothing that we're going to ever allow you to do that could be a situation that is deadly or discriminatory against people. And so there were guardrails, and there are guardrails that we're very, very intense about.
But I think that your guardrails are like around morals and like who we are as human beings,
Yes.
not behavioral.
Can you give an
things.
example?
Like, be a kind person, hold the door for people, say thank you, ask the waiter's name. Like those kinds of things are like unspoken guardrails, whereas I feel like other parents put up guardrails that are like no drinking on the weekends. Like you never put up guardrails that were like activities or experiences or things we do. It's how we are within those experiences are where the guardrails are.
What do most parents get wrong? Like what are some don'ts that you've seen either Dad and I do or other parents do?
Let your kids figure it out themselves.
Yes.
Let their like
Never with drinking and driving.
well yeah.
Obviously.
Honestly, if somebody's like gateway drugging their way into heroin or cocaine or becoming an alcoholic at a young age, like I can bet you that there is a massive lack of love and appreciation and being heard and being seen in their household, and it's probably coming from their parents. Hate to call you guys out, but it's probably coming from their
definitely is.
parents.
It definitely
And you know what? Instead of the like, yeah, you find out that they're doing cocaine, that's terrifying. I can't even imagine what that's like as a parent. But instead of seeing that and having some rash, crazy reaction about like, we're throwing all this out, we're putting you into this, we're putting you into therapy, blah, 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 blah. What I think would be more impactful is like sitting their kid down and being like, can we have it like, here's a punishment. You're not leaving this table until we actually talk this through, because there's got to be a lot more deep-seated issues than just this bag of white powder. Like, I think that the issue is that like parents are just so quick to be like, they're so afraid of it becoming a bigger issue that they just band-aid on a bullet wound and just like put them into when like the real issue is the deep-seated hurt that the kid is feeling and the love that they're not getting.
But I also want to add though that like for a lot of people, the parents sitting down to have that conversation, if the parent is not the actual person to talk to, then a licensed therapist is. And so it's not searching the house to get rid of all the coke and the weed to make sure they don't have any, because I can assure you we're smart, we can find it like anywhere.
This is a question from Avery.
Hi, Avery.
Okay.
Oakley, you're young.
Okay. I'm listening to the episode where Mel talks about her daughter's love life dilemma with Kendall. And I have immediate request for an episode. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I want her to feel comfortable talking to me about these kinds of issues when she's in college. So here's the pitch. How do you raise kids who share information about their lives with you? Can you give people a tool that you could use? Like, is there a takeaway?
I think that the tool that you can use is a warm and excited and interested invitation to asking your kids about their life and showing genuine interest in their life. And I think that in that interest, it like makes your kids want to tell you more in an authentic way.
But I also want to say that I think continuing to ask and continuing to be interested, continuing to be welcoming is very important. But if they are not like receptive, don't take that as just never asking again. I think continue to ask, continue to be interested, but there are times in life when they will not want to tell you, and you need to be respectful of that. And I think it's when parents often overstep and won't stop asking and have to know that.
So that's a great point, is that a parent can comfortably be okay with not hearing
Yes.
anything in response.
Yes.
Just keep asking.
That silence does not need to be misinterpreted as deafening and
Yes.
that there's something wrong, but just that.
Because asking lets them know we're here. We want to listen. We love you.
I have a question from Indre, who has a 3.5-year-old, and she's worried that she's going to screw up her kids by saying something or doing something wrong. And she wants to know, how do you not do that? And I just want to take a stab at this, because I think one of the things that Dad and I have done well is we have screwed up. We have said things wrong, and we are not perfect, but we're really fast and good at apologizing and taking responsibility for the things that we do wrong, or the things that we realize we regret in hindsight, or for doing things that may have hurt your feelings. I think that that's like, if you realize you're just a good person and you're doing the best that you can with whatever you got in terms of your own issues, and you're quick to take responsibility for them, I think it does show that you're open and that you're human and that you're trying. And I don't know.
I agree. Dad, do you have
Next
anything
question.
to say about that?
Yeah, I think that there's, I mean, transparency is big, and sort of leading by your own example and us being willing to share what's so about us, I think it's a good example that can only help in maybe a child wanting to do the same back towards their own parents. But it is fascinating to, even in this conversation, to be hearing about like things that we might think we did well or didn't do well, and you having a completely different interpretation about that.
Yeah.
Because you're naturally at a different age and have a different perspective. And anyway, it sort of makes me think this is all well and good, and ages and differentiation, like that's things are going to get misinterpreted along the way.
Yeah. Another big thing, Indre, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. Beautiful name, by the way. Is honest communication. Like, as parents, be in honest communication with each other, and with your kids, be in honest communication. Like,
What does that mean?
Telling them what's going on, telling them about your day, making sure, like, I feel like you guys were so open and honest in your communication with us, and you would always tell us what was going on or why something was happening, or if we asked a question, you would always tell us. And I think that watching you two be honest with one another, like, inspires us to want to be honest with you. And another thing too, like, under the umbrella of honest communication is, like, I have so many vivid memories of, like, growing up as a family, like, sitting around the fireplace or sitting at dinner or sitting gathering. Like, you guys made such a conscious effort, whether you know it or not, to gather us as a family and to just talk about literally whatever it may be, with fireplace, wood, evergreens, mint, food, our love lives, whatever. Like, you made such a conscious effort to, like, gather us together and get us all talking and communicating with one another, that, like, there were so many times when I was like, I don't want to fucking talk to you guys for 40 minutes at the end of dinner. I want to go play Polly Pockets upstairs and chew on their clothes. But
Me and Kendall, yeah.
but now that I'm at my age, it's like, those are the memories that I cherish the most, and those are the moments that I look forward to the most, which are, like, the rabbit hole conversations we get down. Because I think as kids, I'm trying to stay on track with the question, but, like, making a conscious effort to, like, talk to your kid, and, like, making it like a ritualistic thing where, like, you talk to them after dinner, or you're talking to them in the car, and, like, whether they like it or not, or whether they're showing they don't like it at that point, and maybe they won't, but, like, I think that they'll really appreciate that in the long run, because I know we all did.
I think, though, like, under the umbrella of honest communication, I think a massive part of that is vulnerability. Because I think watching my mom and dad grow up, like, literally I've seen my dad and my mom cry and break down and not be strong and tell us what's going on in their life, how traumatic it is, how sad, how frustrating, how simple it may be, and absolutely, like, be on the ground sobbing, which I think for a kid is a little bit jarring at first to witness like your most idolized person as your parent be weak. But I think that watching our parents sit at the dinner table and bawl their eyes out because work didn't go well that day or because they had a hard conversation with a friend and being completely open and honest about it just essentially made that possible for all of us to do the same.
That's really big. I think when you guys talk about honest communication, most adults forget that kids are truth tellers. And you also are lie detectors. And so when you say honest communication, what you're saying is you trusted us because what we were saying matched your felt experience
In your actions.
in our actions. And I also think we tried very much to make sure that if either one of us were truly upset or frustrated or disappointed or sad, that you knew that it wasn't about you, that it was something going on in our lives, that you were not to blame for negative emotions that we were feeling. Is that true?
Yes, you were very outspoken about that. When like you would be in a bad mood or something, you would make sure, like even like the first thing you would say, I feel like when you would come in the room is, this is not about you. Like this has to do with something else. And then you would continue to be a bitch, but it's fine.
We did do all right if the firstborn is actually saying that stuff. Normally it would just be the thirdborn that would pick up on that.
I love you guys.
I love you too. All right, here's another one. Now let's go to older kids because I think most people are now like, because so far the takeaway for me is seek connection. Because people are going to want to know the how. Like we're talking conceptually.
No, seek connection over correction is so big. So big. You will correct your kids through connecting with them.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And
I'm not a parent, but
Be vulnerable.
if you want your kids to be open with you, you have to model being open with them. And that doesn't mean sharing inappropriate things. Because I don't think you guys should have access to or know like the details about our marriage. Like that's for Dad and I.
Thank God.
And so I feel like you have to model openness. You have to talk about what's going on in your life. You have to talk about your feelings. You've got to show your feelings.
I think that you guys showing that like at times you are weak shows that you're human and like makes, I don't know, like it gives us more space to do that too. Cause like, okay, I'm going to stutter for a second until I get to what I'm saying. But like in being weak, in crying in front of us, like I think so many parents are so just try to look so strong and perfect in front of their kids all the time. But it's like by showing your kids that like you guys are also human, like allows your kids to feel those things too as they start to grow up.
I also think like I know so many of my friends till this day as a 23-year-old, a lot of them have been like, I've never seen my parents cry ever. And I think, and not saying that you need to walk downstairs and bawl your eyes out every goddamn day, but like, I just think that not showing your true emotion to your kids is sad and not real life, honestly.
Yes.
And I think that hiding that away from your kids and putting on a smile every single day makes a kid feel like they can't have a bad day.
I also think that a lot of parents think they got to keep the stiff upper lip and they got to stay strong and they got to like be the one in charge because that's going to make the kids feel safe. And I actually think when you see your parents being human, it makes you know that you can count on them to be honest with you and that you can count on them to tell you, what's going on.
It's like honest feeling and communication. Like,
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next question. But takeaway, don't be a dictator. Just be vulnerable.
Yeah, connection over correction. Do you have any ideas as our CFO, the chief fun officer of our family, for how we could mix it up this year over the holidays?
Honestly, like, I feel like I'll just spitball. I don't have any in particular, knowing our family, but I think there's ideas that can be super out there and wild. For example, like the anything but clothes dinner, which I really wish honestly didn't happen after Dad walked down in a like pedal something over his junk and nothing else.
He
But
had clogs on.
oh, perfect. Um, but I mean, that was like a little too out there. And we do that with like our friends. And I didn't anticipate you guys taking it that seriously. And God knows I don't want to see our grandmother JJ with a Vouv box over her uplifted tits. But I think that what we could do, which could be like wholesome, is I don't know. I feel like there's a ton of different things. The first thing that came to my mind is this isn't like out there or anything, but I remember we used to like paint pottery a lot when we were up in Vermont. So maybe we could get like a bunch of pottery to paint for everyone or something like wholesome like that. Or we could, I remember you and Amy went to like a flower build or like a flower building thing or
Mhm.
reef
Yep.
class, something like that.
Yep.
Um, I mean, the obvious dance party, we've done lip syncing battles. I feel like it would get a little, I feel like people would be offended if we did the theme everyone dresses the other person. So I think avoid doing that.
Oh, I like
But
that one.
you like that?
Yes, I do.
So what?
So
I
how do you
dress.
come up with your ideas?
Honestly, like, I don't even know. I feel like I get inspiration from like online. I'll see a photo of, for example, like a colonial costume and be like, oh my gosh, it would be so fun to incorporate that into a bar crawl. And then you plan the whole bar crawl and you just make sure, I don't know. I feel like I'm very forceful in these type of ideas. So people don't really have a choice whether they want to dress up or not. And I'm not saying that that's the way to go about it, but I think that every single idea or like fun theme or party idea that I have ever come up with, I just make sure that I go 100% all out so that if you don't do so and you show up to the party or you show up to the bar call, like you're the one who looks out of place. Um, which sounds horrible, but I just feel like if you're the one planning and you're not the one going 100% or even like being super outgoing or rowdy about it and making sure everyone feels comfortable like in and around the group, whoever's participating in it, then it would never work because I feel like anything as the creator, you need to believe in it just as much as anyone else for anyone else to like actually do it.
I absolutely love that. Okay, so takeaway number one from our chief fun officer, Sawyer Robbins, is if you're going to plan something fun and unexpected over the holidays, which we are saying you absolutely should, you got to go all in. You got to be the most excited in order to enroll everybody else. Now, I want to give everybody a couple ideas because you've been sensational at planning things for our families. So over the quarantine, everybody, Sawyer made a month-long chart, and on it were themed nights. And so one of them is the one she regrets, where she made us all show up to dinner wearing anything but clothes. Second one that she did is we did that cooking show where we had a bake-off, right? Where you had to make a dessert.
Yeah, that's another actually good idea I feel like for Thanksgiving is instead of like everyone bringing the food to the table and then everyone just eats it, it's fun to like bring all the ingredients to individual's house, etc., and then bake off or cook off or whatever and have a little bit of a competition. And I am severely competitive, so I always love that type of stuff. But I think that gets everyone together and in high spirits, and obviously food brings people together, so that's another fun idea. But yes, we did a bake off. I did not win. I was crushed for days. My mom won and Kendall. I think you guys made like mousse.
Yes.
Me and dad might have like literally bought cookie dough and like had at it. I have no idea.
But the other way that our chief fun officer Sawyer supersized this is we had to be in costume as chefs.
Right.
So another thing that we do as a family that you have planned is we do like these games like Salad Bowl, where you take a big salad bowl and everybody just takes pieces of paper and throws in names. And it could be names that are anything from Mickey Mouse to, the president, to actors, to people in your family. And then you basically divide into two teams and you play the charades game of having to guess how many you can get in a minute. That's a really fun game, brings out the competitive spirit. We've also, with our family over the summer vacation, we have done these family Olympics where you Google yard games, whether it's the balloon toss or the egg races or various yard games. But key to this, Sawyer, again, bringing the fun, makes everybody divide into teams that have a color. And then you got to go all out on the color of your team and the costumes you're wearing for your team. Now, do you have any other ideas? Because I feel like these are kind of in categories, everybody, that there are activities that you can do together. There are games you can play and teams you can break into together. Like, what if this were the year, Sawyer, that we did a huge capture the flag game with the whole family?
Yeah, that would be really fun, actually. That's a great idea. See, look at you.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, well, capture the flag is a great idea, like games, etc. I think that always brings people together. And I think that what always makes something more fun is, as I'm sure you can see a consistent theme here, is costumes or dress up or something along the lines of not wearing just your regular everyday sweats or clothes or Thanksgiving meal dresses, etc. And so costumes always makes things more fun, as well as decorations. Like, I think if you are able to really deck out your house or even like the Thanksgiving dinner table, it always just makes people feel so much more excited and lively. And if you want to get everyone involved, I've done parties where I ask individuals to bring different types of decorations, and then we all get together and decorate the place together and then essentially destroy the place, and then I'm the one cleaning it up. But I think that decorations and costumes and obviously music is always a good idea.
Okay. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.